Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Liz Arago, and I'm here on behalf of the Drawing Room. Joining us today is someone very special who has called herself an unabashed wine woman nerdatron.
Oh, you were taking notes during that little
What was that?
conversation?
What was that?
You were taking notes when I said that?
We put it in an email, so I was like, I need to keep this. But we also call her our in-house wine expert and our dear friend Corey Newford. So Corey, thank you for joining us.
It's good. This is good. Good morning for any of you. We're doing this before noon.
Well, I think it's like a Sunday brunch.
Sunday brunch, and all of our senses we're still fresh in the morning, so we're tasting better, and that will, I'm sure, come off on camera.
We shall find out. So I know one thing that we're thinking a lot about is the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. And as everyone, I'm sure, has already said and talked about, Thanksgiving's going to be a little different this year, but it's still an opportunity to engage our senses. And so, Corey, I'm sure you have some thoughts for us about picking wines for whatever we might be eating this Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So perhaps your Facebook feeds, your Instagrams are starting to fill up with questions about what are you drinking for Thanksgiving? And it's a perennial thing. Holidays tend to have this gravitas pull where they focus on this one important meal. And often you get a lot of volunteered answers about what people are going to drink, but you don't get a lot of discussion about why they're going with something. If you Google this, or if you've just been in the wine world for enough time, you'll see that Beaujolais is the go-to for Thanksgiving for your red drinkers, but even for your whites, because Beaujolais is kind of in the middle Goldilocks area where it's not too much of anything. And that is a little crucial because turkey, even though it's delicious, is bland. So you don't want a wine that's going to be overwhelming to that. At the same time, if the people who are going to be joining you for your turkey feast, if they are hardcore, let's say, barrel-aged Chardonnay people or Cabernets or, big tannic reds, you just go with that and throw caution to the wind and just know it's going to be okay, because rarely is a wine food pairing bad. I mean, it's right. Like, have you ever had a dinner or a pairing where you were like, remember in 2007, that fateful night? Or
I can't say I've ever experienced that sort of thing, but
yeah.
I'm still new in my wine adventure, so I'm sure others may have that story, but I'm not sure it's as common as people might think when we put so much pressure on the food and wine pairing.
I would love it if people contacted us with their wine food pairing nightmares. I have one.
Oh, okay. Please share.
It's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Mexico once during the a trip when I was in my 20s, and I successfully took with me a bottle, like a 200 bottle of Sassicaia, this a Tuscan red, a super Tuscan, and 4 Riedel glasses, and nothing broke. And we were in Mexico, and we all ate Mexican food, and we had a little kitchenette. So we went to some of us went to a local market and got tortillas and avocados and blah blah. And we were all excited because we were all joking this whole time about my Italian red wine and how expensive it was, blah blah. And I don't remember when I started getting that sinking feeling that we were eating like the worst food you can imagine to pair with a $200 bottle of Italian wine. And I didn't say anything because I knew like deep down, like it's bull. Like it will be great. It'll be really memorable for everyone. But inside I was also dying a little because we should have had. But where does that idea come? We should have had.
Yeah. So what happened when you had the Super Tuscan with your Mexican?
Everyone was like, "This is great." Now, it's a bit of a delicate red wine. I mean, it had been cellared enough that it wasn't like super tannic. I don't know if I've only had Sassicaia, a handful of times, and I can't remember if I ever had a vintage that was really young and tannic and tight and mouth puckering. The stuff I had was really, my memory is it was very like smooth and silky and had depth, but it was also kind of delicate. So I would want to, I'd had it with like a ossobuco and, just typical, bolognese, just a naughty Italian food. I'd also had it with dessert, like chocolatey, naughty things too, mushroom entrees, but also, I was working in an Italian restaurant at the time. So that food was always available to me. And so I don't remember anything weird happening, like it getting bitter or.
It just wasn't. I know one thing that we had talked about was just when things play nicely together. So they weren't playing nicely together, right? They were fine, They were swinging side by side on the swing set, but they weren't on the same seesaw.
That's what my memory is telling me when I had the corn tortilla with the salsa and the Italian red. A couple other more memorable moments with wine food pairing gone wrong is with spicy food and red wine, where it just makes it even hotter. And I already am not a huge fan of spicy food, so that is not,
your preference.
Yeah. Mostly though, the mishaps with wine food pairing are if you have someone who is allergic to tannin or thinks that this will give them a migraine or they know for sure, just little things like that. I mean, that is terrible. And that means pretty much they can't drink it.
Right.
It's the worst case scenario, I think.
Yeah. And that's not even a food wine pairing mishap. That's a wine guest pairing.
Yes. I've not done this, but textbook wise, if you pair something like, like a tannic red wine with lobster, I guess it gives it a metallic taste. So that might not be pleasurable, but even then, I really feel like most people wouldn't catch on. They might go, and then like add more butter or, or salt, which is, well, before we segue to salt.
Sure.
What we have here would be one of my go-to recommendations. Cheers, Liz.
Cheers, Corey.
Would be, it's called Geisenheimer. This is something brand new at Westport Rivers. And by brand new, we've been growing it, the grape for a while, Geisenheim 218. And we just never bottled it as a wine in its own right on the label. This is one of these wines that is very big, low-ish in sugar. This whole thing about the word dry, I mean, it really is a relationship between acid and sugar. And so while we've been talking about what is a bad food pairing wine, we can also talk about what is a food wine. Like, what does that mean? A lot of people talk about it like everyone knows what that means. Rarely do you say, what the heck is that? Does it need food? Because
right.
There's that.
So what is a food wine?
A food wine. It goes back to another phrase or clue, cleansing the palate. So we will use wine or a sorbet or something often during a meal to cleanse the palate. It's a polite way, an idiom of referencing drool, which a lot of people wouldn't really want to talk about during a meal. Does this make you drool? Oh, I'm drooling so much. You've got a little bit right here. So in polite community at the dinner table, we'll say cleansing the palate. So if you push through and think a little bit more about what that means, it's acidic enough that you are drooling. And if you imagine then eating, you've just eaten something, let's say, really naughty and well marbled, or lots of cheese, or just something dense, even peanut butter, imagine, or saltine cracker. It's a little bit uncomfortable, and it thereby would be comfortable to get rid of that. And an acidic liquid or food does the job. So that's the most basic rubric or the scaffolding of what a food wine is. It's just, it enables you to keep going with pleasure. It's a tool you can use if you want to be that reductive about it.
Which I think is very important for a holiday meal, right? Which is usually a little more indulgent, or maybe a few more side dishes, a little more butter than, say, one might normally have.
Well, and then in the case of Thanksgiving, is it tryptophan? Mm-hmm. That chemical that makes you sleepy. So along with food coma, you then have the tryptophan, and people are nodding off. Mm-hmm. People are checking out a little bit. The conversation's starting to diminish in ways. So if you have something juicy and refreshing, that also can help a little bit. But at the same time, it can enable you to maybe eat a little more than maybe what you should, but it's the holiday.
And so you should. It's the holiday, and it's 2020, so
that's right.
We encourage enjoyment.
Everything means more. It's the self-care component is there. Mm-hmm. So with this Geisenheimer, because it is a new wine, it also is a little exotic. You don't have all these expectations. So you're like, ooh, what? It's in the realm of full-bodied white wines that are dry to semi-sweet. I'm sure there are Geisenheims out there that are sweet. We don't do that. We like, and this is a cool nod to terroir, to what the south coast of New England does well, is acid. So we're in a balmy climate, a maritime climate, where the grapes have enough hang time to develop to ripen properly, as in the grapes have done what they need to do to get rid of the more vegetable-like flavors and then well up in all this deliciousness. Well, at the same time, there's not too much heat where you've hemorrhaged or respirated off too much of your acid. Mm. So if you want to have a little fun with that idea, for those of you who are acid heads, who really like acidic, juicy, mouth-watering wines, that is a helpful way to look at what our climate does so well. Our climate, or AVA, American Viticultural Area, is called Southeastern New England, and it encompasses Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. And this is one of these wines that is really emblematic of that, because it's so big, it's very complex. Whose milk could be whole milk sort of big, that's what I mean. The bouquet, and let's just go here and do that. So initially I get just very simple white, apple, pear, the typical white wine. Lychee fruit, just really lovely, lovely citrus. And once you get your schnoz in there long enough and you really start to kind of calibrate, this one, more than any other white that we have, I start getting these florals that pitch toward roses. And and lilies, with this really strong floral, which immediately I start thinking of Gewürztraminer, which is also big, unctuous, like fat, delicious, juicy, mouthwatering wine. That is this almost like the saison of wine. It's got like kind of a gumball, like clove spice, and then but lots of floral. Unlike beer or saison, and or beer is saison, that doesn't really cleanse the palate. And there's yeast in it, and it's just like, whew. Wine, on the other hand, doesn't have yeast in it. It's got acid, the type of acid that makes you drool. So I'm not arguing that you can't have food beer. They're just totally different. Your expectations are so different. So with this, you get all the trappings of something really big and kind of naughty and really interesting, just in the bouquet. And then sipping. This is my first sip of the day, and it's always like, whoa, it's like really invigorating, and kind of a slap on the tongue, like, yeah, I have not been eating, so I'm not having this sort of like cleaning things that were there. The bouquet, though, is, if I was writing this down, I would say the bouquet is realized on the palate. Nothing weird or shocking is happening. It's very pleasurable. Liz, did you take a sip?
I did, and I also had toast with cheese earlier, so I was getting a nice like cleansing of the palate, much saliva production / drooling.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. And you know, as we were saying, you know, we're recording this, you know, at like a Sunday brunch time, so it would be my first sip of alcohol of the day. Yeah. And it's like I think I got like a kind of like an apple at the start, and like a what did you say? It's realized on the palate. Is that like the balanced, even feel? Is that like, you know, the technical term? But I'm also I'm a big fan of Gewürztraminer in the first place. So tasting this, like this wine is right up my alley. When I used to go out to eat, if a restaurant had, you know, a Gewürztraminer on the menu, I would lean towards that, because I think not realizing it, I didn't realize how well it often paired with the food that I often enjoyed to eat. Yeah. And, you know, it worked well as a food wine without even realizing it. I thought I just liked the taste, which I also do. So I feel like, you know, Westport Rivers made this wine for me. So thank you.
Our plan worked.
Excellent.
I can't wait until the next like comfortable dining situation. Again, another thing to be thankful for as we're like planning future and hope at the end of all of this. It's going to make those meals so much better. It's going to, like, I think, elevate these experiences into something. Like for us, for my household, we are not going to be able to join family. Right. So we're going to Zoom for a little while. We're also going to have it's going to be stress. Yeah. Because I'm going to be part of making turkey this year. And that is going to be a show. So it's, everything is just different. I think that is going to be like en masse, just another strange 2020ism. It has to be better to help with your self-care.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've all, you know, everyone's had different things go on this year, but we all know 2020 is a year like no other. But I was listening to, you know, a story on NPR this morning, and they were talking about, you know, the importance of just noting the holiday, noting that it's going to be different, but, you know, doing something, you know, whether you're eating, you know, a Thanksgiving meal on your own or with, you know, just a couple people, you know, it will be different this year, but it's important for ourselves just to note that it's still a holiday. It's still a day to to just take a moment to pause for yourself. And one of the ways that you can do that is just being thoughtful about what you're choosing to consume, whether it is just like your favorite beer, your favorite seltzer, or in my case, a really nice bottle of Geisenheimer. Is that what it's
called? Geisenheimer.
Geisenheimer. Just to make something special in a very odd time.
Yeah, it's I'm glad you worded it that way. I wasn't really like, when you curate down to that level, you are transforming this into a place that I have control.
Right.
That I have, and I think a lot of us feel like we've had our control taken away, our feeling of self-agency taken away by so many things out of our control. So that one act of like, a lot of us reflexively drink. We just, the same old, ice cubes in the glass, or, the larger bottles if we kind of every day do that, or, with our meals or whatever. To go out and do something a little bit more thoughtful and special that transforms it not into just, how will this pair, but it philosophically feels, or psychologically, is just another thing on the menu of a little bit of control.
Right.
In a good way.
There is not much we can control in 2020, but you can make good choices about the wine you choose to drink on special days.
Yeah.
Sometimes I always say, sometimes a special day is a Tuesday. And that's okay.
I mean, we're laughing, but it's so true.
Oh no, it's absolutely true. One of my favorite gifts to give people, when they're celebrating some type of an event, is a basket of wine. I got this idea from a friend. You give them a basket of wine, but you include tags on the wine, so it's like, drink this wine on like whatever. And so I would always say, drink this wine on your first anniversary, drink this wine, on a weekend away, but then or drink this wine on a picnic. But I would always say drink this wine on a Tuesday. Because sometimes, like, we've all had a Tuesday.
I love that.
And if you have a special Tuesday bottle of wine when you need it,
get the Tuesday out, June.
Yeah, the Tuesday wine.
If we can.
Yes.
So we're talking about the mundane, the sort of everyday banality, things that are not holidays. And there is this lovely collision of that when you introduce champagne or champagne method wine, which feels like one of the most, it's a liquid in a bottle that is larded. It's freighted with all of this, only for
special occasions.
Special occasion, only New Year's, only a wedding, So the idea of Tuesday champagne, it's just like a little joy.
Yeah.
Joy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say even like this champagne. So everyone knows Corey and I live about 15 minutes apart. So a few days ago we had Thursday champagne. So I met Corey in a socially distanced front porch gathering.
Yeah.
We're at opposite ends of her front porch, and we had this exact champagne on a Thursday evening. And as the mailman walked by, he was really proud of us, and I was proud of us too.
Yeah, he was like, "I've seen a lot of porches in my time. You're doing right.
We're doing it right." So I think we'd like to bring to the world the idea of Thursday champagnes.
Thursday champagnes on your front porch with blankets, heater blankets if you can. Hello, like you can do that in the winter here. It's transformative, and it's using probably neglected space. It will also, I think, get you to look at your porch in a different way where you're actually going to use it.
Right.
Front porch, patio, whatever. I guess the porch is nice because it's got a roof. So that can be helpful. And a little bit of a windbreak, but not too much. But yeah, that was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. So I think that's one way people can also bring joys into their 2020.
Yeah.
Um,
Just
Thursday porch or patio wine.
Yeah. You're neglecting to say what else we were doing with the champagne.
Well, are you ready for that segue?
Well, okay.
You want to talk about the champagne first, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about this. This is the first ever champagne method we did, the RJR. So the two sons who own and made the wine, Rob and Bill Russell, they surprised their dad, who originally purchased the land that is now Westport Rivers. And the very first champagne method they did, they named it after him, and it was a surprise. Like, how lovely is that? So this is the RJR. Let me see, this is like backwards for me. RJR, or the Robert James Russell. So everyone just says, "Can I have a glass of RJR?" This was our first, and this thing is one of the most exotic wines I've ever been lucky enough to be around. This has been served in the White House 3 times. It's bipartisan. Has loved on this. This was in an episode of The West Wing. So season 1, episode 18, 6 meetings before lunch. It's right at the beginning. What else can I say? This is like a continual fascination for me, and with a new series coming up. I don't know if it's on Netflix or Amazon, but there's gonna be a new Julia Child series, and I bring that up because this was Julia Child's favorite for domestic champagne method. In fact, the last night her kitchen was in her house, she had the Russells out. Jacques Pepin was in the kitchen making everything, and they drank the RJR while feasting. And then the next morning, the Smithsonian took apart her kitchen. So I have to name drop shamelessly because a lot of people don't realize the bona fides, the majesty of the RJR. Also, the price point doesn't really match all of that. It's retails for around $30 a bottle. And what I'm telling you feels more like $130 a bottle. This is one of those strange, among many strange,
it's magical. It's really magical.
Like strange, magical, wondrous things about the South Coast of Massachusetts. There's so much, the Cape usually gets all the attention, or Boston, or Providence, but there is this stretch of land that is just wonder. And this, I would argue, is probably it's one of the most unicorn sort of mesmerizing things that you're in champagne country, or champagne method country. We just look at that word champagne as basically a recipe. So we follow all the steps that champagne producers do in Champagne, France. Drinking this, this is one of these wines where often people will say, "Oh, that needs food." This guy is a meal in a glass, and it's one of the best food wines I've ever come across because it has this juicy acidity, but at the same time, this heft and richness that is just so satisfying by itself. This also gets really intriguing if you start thinking about this as your Thanksgiving wine. No one does that. No one is like, "We're having champagne this year." And I know a lot of people do that, but in general, Beaujolais and Riesling or just whatever usually gets more attention than champagne or champagne method. So Liz, should we assess this a little
bit?
This bouquet is just always catches me off guard because it is this like dance of like honey and brioche bread and just regular fruit. Apple is always apple and citrus are very predominant in our terroir or our wines. But I think this one you could really spend a lot of time in. I mean, vanilla, yes, marmalade, lemony, but also like this grapefruity quality too. Apple bread pudding, ginger, toasted sesame. There are these little kind of laced throughout these like rich umami like chemistry, and a little French fry. Saying to you, let's take my hand and let's go in the other room and eat. Like it's just like this come hither. Like what wine has that? It's just ridiculous. There's so much in here.
Yeah, it's a really impressive wine. And it's impressive, but it's also accessible. I think that's what I like about it. Like it's enjoyable. Like you said, the price point is so reasonable based on the impact and the impact and the history that it's had. But it's so drinkable, which I know is just like an easy way to like describe things, but I think sometimes people get scared by the thought that the wine might be complex. But I think when you have a complex, drinkable wine, that's what I mean when it's like magical, because you can enjoy it and experience it and just, share it with others.
So on our now famed, infamous Thursday porch wine, last Thursday, we were not just having champagne method on a porch, but we were also doing a salt tasting as well.
So one of the great things that Anthony now carries in the store is hand harvested, handcrafted, local sea salt by our friends at Duxbury Saltworks. So Corey and I decided to apply a little bit of our wine tasting approach to tasting salt. And so we took the sea salt sampler from Duxbury Saltworks, and we're doing a tasting of their different classic sea salts and their sea salt blends with wine. And so, Corey, what did you think was going to happen when we were doing our tasting?
That's interesting. What did I think
was
going to happen? I thought that it would make the wine more flavorful, or would just from in the kitchen, you talk about salt always as an enhancer. And it doesn't usually get more sophisticated than that. Too much, not enough. Usually home chefs don't use enough salt. So I thought, and I had done I mentioned this, a salt wine pairing like 10 years ago, more than that. When I was working at a restaurant, I was probably still a server, and we were doing just this kind of fun, like lick a lemon slice and try the wine, have some salt and try the wine, have whatever we were trying, and then the wine. The idea is that food always changes wine and not the other way around. But with these salts, there was unexpected things happening, partly because I had never had the seasonal salt that they had. So what about you? Like, what were you?
I also thought going into it like naively, my first just like no introduction, just like, oh, if I taste salt and wine together, I assumed the salt would make the flavors of the wine kind of explode in my mouth in different ways. Like that was my assumption. And then when we were tasting the different salts with the wine, it was interesting to note the different experience with the different types of salts that we were trying, right? Yeah. So it varied because, we tried the classic sea salt, and then there are 4 seasonal blends, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, appropriately. And Corey and I were able to note different things that were happening in our mouths that actually kind of enhanced the experience of the salt, which I thought was fascinating, because I don't know if I've ever experienced salt outside of like, I want some potato chips. You know what I mean? Like, or knowing the food has too much salt or not enough salt. But tasting the salts with the wine, we actually got to experience salt and experience it in general, which I thought was kind of fun.
Like one thought, if I had one from that whole experience, was the temporality of the sip, where you would get this initial like the salt would kind of bloom, or the wine would just kind of become more brilliant on the palate,
Mm-hmm.
and then go away. And then this salt flavor would just kind of like be on the finish, and just 20, 30, 60 seconds, a couple minutes for just one sip. And we were sitting out there on the porch, just like, oh.
Yeah. So what we did, if anyone wants to try along, I don't know, of course, if you want to even just like taste one now, is we just took little samples of salt. I put some on a
blend.
They come in. You want us to? Which one was your favorite experience?
The autumn.
The autumn blend?
I can't. I've only done this once.
Can't play favorites, but we'll try the autumn. So the autumn blend. I'm gonna look at it right now. The autumn blend has the classic sea salt, paprika, dill, chili pepper, and black peppercorn. And so we just took a little, put it on the tongue, experienced it, and then added some wine magic to it.
I am definitely gonna make some savory popcorn. With the next whatever I'm gonna watch. Trying to get through the Queen's Gambit and finishing Korra, the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. Oh,
gotcha. I enjoyed the Queen's Gambit. I did finish.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this.
So what I really enjoyed about the autumn blend, and I think it's something that you and I talked about during our porch tasting, is the dill in it. Mm-hmm. There's something so delightful and specific about dill. So it had you thinking about popcorn, and it had me thinking about making some like crackers. Yeah. I wanted like the most perfectly seasoned crackers. And what's interesting is when you smelled this salt, or when I smelled it, it's like paprika forward, and then the dill comes next. And when I experienced it with tasting it and then having some wine with it, the dill was just so lovely.
There's something so satisfying about this. Mm-hmm. Like it's like a meal. Like I feel like so this pairing is just hand in glove. Mm-hmm. Out of, I think I'll maybe the winter one.
I think so. As we were talking about before about, being on the swing set side by side or on the seesaw, both autumn and winter, they were playing together. Yeah. They were playing together really nicely when we paired them with the wines. And I wonder if it's just the specific, like the dill and the paprika of the autumn, and the winter has parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. And I just wonder if those specific seasonings just work so well with the wine that we're drinking.
Yeah. Well,
and also this we're tasting the salt, right out of the jar. But you actually would cook with the salt or use it as a seasoning after. Normally, you wouldn't just be like down
not normal
with your wine. But I think it is nice to experience what you're adding to your food when you do this like sort of tasting. And what I thought was interesting when we did the summer blend. So the summer blend was the one that has classic sea salt, lemon peel, and basil. And so this one is the one that super activated my drool.
The winter.
The summer did. The summer did. The summer was the one that was like, go outside and have like a cookout sort of thing.
Can I just say, so I just had the Geisenheimer,
mm-hmm.
and I'm getting this. Oh my gosh! Like there's something in this salt that's getting spicy.
Mm-hmm. Which one did you try?
I'm still in the autumn.
Still in autumn.
Just like a little peppery.
Well, there's black peppercorn in it.
Oh,
so that would make sense.
Okay, so the that did not happen with the champagne. The champagne method, the RJR, was much more like integrated.
Mm-hmm.
This, I'm finding that the wine is feeling like it's dominating a little bit, but at
Sure.
the same time, yeah, it feels like the wine's on top. I don't know why. And the dill isn't as dominant. It's the
Mm,
paprika spice.
mm.
Like, what is that? So imagine putting that on, rubbing your turkey with that. Like,
It sounds amazing.
this is some of what chefs can do, that part of their due diligence before they decide on a spice blend. You can also just easily have it on your table, and while you're eating, sprinkle a little bit of this on a nice sumptuous cut of turkey, and then take a sip of the two different wines if you want to nerd out to that level.
Yeah, everyone, you can turn your Thanksgiving dinner into a salt wine tasting
Yeah.
experience.
So fascinating.
So yeah, there's just, there's a lot of, I think, unexplored territory, individually about why we turn to the food that we turn to. So I think it's interesting to pause and just like experience the taste. And that's what, we were doing when we were literally letting the salt blends dissolve on our tongues and, experience the flavors and experience the blends and think about, what you enjoy about this. So like when I tasted the winter blend, there's rosemary in it. And when I think of the times that I've used rosemary, I think I've been way too aggressive with my rosemary. And so letting this sit on my tongue with the blend of other seasonings, I saw how lovely rosemary can be when it's handled appropriately.
Yeah. I'm gonna get some out. I'm gonna go with more of the Geisenheimer just because we've done the RJR. I love how you can see like the occasional large crystal amid these crunchy little bits of crystal, and then the herbs are really cut up. I mean, they're pretty small, but yeah, not that small. Can you repeat again? So it was rosemary, parsley,
sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Just having you say that, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for winter. Like it just
right.
Well, this is interesting. I don't mean to draw this out.
No, go for it.
But
I want the drama.
So for this one, I feel like the salt has this kind of brilliant initial sort of burst of like a denouement or denouement, like a kind of a brightness, and then just gets eclipsed by the wine. And it's just, again, it's lovely. I think this is enhancing the wine. This is making the wine brighter. And
which is interesting because when we had it with the RJR, it was enhancing the salt experience. And in this case, right? And in this case, the salt is enhancing the wine experience.
Oh my gosh. I remember just realizing, I salt, the flavor of salt, that minerally, whatever. I love so I started reading a book that someone was a Christmas gift a couple years ago that I just never read.
It happens.
Jillian. Mark Kurlansky's Salt: A World History, and he a couple times in there he writes it's the only rock that humans eat, and then he gives some really interesting kind of jaw-dropping. He's having fun with trying to shock us into what salt, like how much salt we have in our bodies.
Sure.
An adult human contains about 250 grams of salt, which would fill 3 or 4 salt shakers. So that's nice. I wanted to know that. I mention it though.
So we're like this much salt.
We're like that much salt. When you're looking at what salt does on your palate, like for sugar and so sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami. And I guess there's he mentions in the book that there's more evidence that we have on our papillae a protein receptor for fats, but that the jury's still out on that. Those are different. The relationship, the reaction, the chemical reaction that happens on your tongue concerning those ingredients are like a key and a lock. With salt, it's different. We have all these channels for sodium chloride, for salt. And there are different salts in the world, but NaCl, table salt, is the perfect fit where it just goes right in our tongue. And so there's this ease of it. That's a little bit of interesting knowledge to have as you're trying to make sense of the interaction of salt on our tongues, and then all the complexity of, having sweet, sour, salty, bitter in our wines, if we can just kind of use those larger terms. That the ion or the uptake of the ion channels in our tongues kind of helps along the whole process of taste. And so that's why chefs will often, or people just in general, say salt is an enhancer. Especially with glutamates or the umami. And that's where MSG comes from, is you're just adding salt to glutamic acid, which is in fats. And you're artificially adding it, if it's in a powder form. And umami can come in all sorts of ways. But again, this is kind of an enhancer sort of thing. So when you're dealing with wine, with some of these wines, so with the champagne in our salts, we found that there was a strange finish of just salt flavor. So I'm going to do that right now. I love that you talked about rosemary being like a little bit of a tricky herb because it is so big, and how this blend really kind of complicates it in a way that helps integrate it into a more a tapestry of flavor.
Oh, I love that.
Oh yeah, this totally, it's like a burst of the champagne flavors, the RJR just kind of overwhelms immediately. And now it's just salt.
And then it's gone. Yeah.
I am so doing this during dinner. I'll have these out and I'll be like,
well, we were having a fun time the other night doing this, and we're certainly enjoying it now. So I definitely recommend if everyone out there is feeling adventurous with their how they're going to spend some time with family or on your own on Thanksgiving, doing a salt tasting with a wine pairing, and just experience flavors. And that's what I think has been nice about it. We're just experiencing flavors that we sometimes take for granted, flavors that we think we know, and just, let them show us what actually happens in our mouth as we're enjoying them.
Yeah.
Which is great. So awesome. So Corey, what wines are you gonna serve on Thanksgiving then?
Oh, no, I'm going to do these too.
Yeah.
One, I've talked about them more than almost any other wines I've ever talked about with Thanksgiving that I can remember. That's probably not true because I've been talking about wine and food forever. But it's the salt that's really the salt, and then having a brand new wine.
Yeah.
What does it do? That I'm going to do some heavy lifting this year, and I'm going to buy some for other people so they can also get back to me on that. What about you, Liz?
Well, I'm definitely bringing the Geisenheimer to dinner. It's just going to be me and my parents. And I'll be buying some of the RJR for myself, though. For my next champagne salt porch patio gathering. It's delightful.
Yeah. I haven't asked you this for your Thanksgiving dinner. Are you doing anything with sauces, or like because sauces are another way to gracefully like add things and mitigate things, just like salts are.
I'm not sure yet. I try to avoid the cooking portion of it. Thanks, Mom. I often help with the prep, but not the final stages. But I think this year we're actually leaning towards doing a roast instead of a turkey. Turkey's not my favorite. I was actually a vegetarian for a very long time, and then when I stopped being a vegetarian, for some reason, the last thing I wanted was chicken or turkey. I wanted steak. And so, I don't know. That's just how it's been. And so, like, to this day, when I cook for myself mostly. Well, I cook for myself entirely vegetarian. But when I would go out or someone else would cook for me, I'd be like, "It's steak, right?" But I feel like these some of these salt blends will go nicely with my mom's cooking. So I'm excited.
Can I add, because the summer blend, was it lemon?
Yes, lemon peel and basil.
Lemon peel. For this one, I'm gonna have some zested lemon. I'm gonna kind of add to it. So it's not a sauce, but I'm really wanting to deconstruct this year, deconstruct ingredients. And I'll probably, along with the gravy, probably have some sort of naughty, creamy something.
So, Corey, I do have one question for you. You've used the word naughty a lot to describe foods and wine. When you say naughty, what do you mean? Fatty?
Fatty. I'm drooling a little bit.
Yeah. Is it just something that feels indulgent? Because you were like this, you described like a wine as naughty, but I wouldn't necessarily describe a wine as fatty, but something that feels like it's indulgent. Is that what you're doing?
Is the word, like overwhelming and a luxuriant.
Yeah.
Whether like the RJR, to me, like, I guess I could also say full-bodied in a way, but we certainly know there are a lot of thick, syrupy wines out there that I would not say are naughty. I would say, are simple, unbalanced, or whatever. Sometimes can be good.
Right.
Many times can be good, but when naughty is just this way that kind of tickles you a little, and there's a glee, kind of like buoyed by this really, usually it's caloric. There's some calories. So chocolate, steaks, something that just almost or does move you to peel in laughter a bit. You know?
Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I kind of love that, and something that I think we need a lot in 2020 is that type of
Yes.
naughtiness. And so I would posit that we don't consider it as something that is, you know, an indulgence. It's something that is required in
Yeah. Like
2020.
even the idea of gratuitous or hedonism. I think let's get a little nerdy here. It's probably this sort of like Protestant work ethic, you shall have no pleasure until heaven sort of thing. The word hedonism, like we have the concept of it, but I think more we're just trying to get a little break.
Yeah.
You know? It's reasonable that we should have some pleasure with these things. And even the word sensual, often people they kind of think of sex and foreboding sort of things. And really we're Americans in particular, because we're prudes, we are inherently uncomfortable with our bodies and with nudity and with even smelling. Like, and this is a larger thing that Bianca Bosker talks about in her, you know, how the idea of smelling was looked upon as being as close as it comes with the senses, with being an animal. And that misinformed idea has informed everything from medicine and medical research to just how we are in our day to day. And because wine is so much about smelling, I mean, this glass here is made for smelling.
Literally sticking your nose in it.
Your nose, gathering the bouquet, the chemicals that are oxidizing. That it necessitates, if you're going to do this right and talk about it right, you have to talk about smelling. You have to talk about drooling. You have to talk about your senses. And usually that is done in community with each other. So I said, let's nerd out a bit, but I feel like this should be just par for the course when you are going to involve wondrous wine, thoughtful cooking, a thoughtful place you're curating and creating and inviting others to come in to. There's that.
No, I agree. So everyone, we welcome you to tap into your senses, smell your wine, taste your salts and salt blends, enjoy your foods. And if you need, obviously, any of the wines we've talked about, any of the salts we've talked about, they are available at the Drawing Room in historic downtown New Bedford. And you can also check things out on the website, anthef.com/shop. And Corey, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love being able to learn about wines, taste things, experience things, explore my senses with you, and we welcome everyone else to do the same.
Oh.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.